Two new cornerbacks arrived to the Washington Commanders. We're going to dive into those two names, and we're going to look at the future of the position, where it stands today and where it could go in April. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast, and you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and sign up today to become an insider. You'll get news, analysis, one-on-one conversations, and we are dropping on Monday night, Tuesday morning, our first editions of our free agent film studies, dropping all to insiders. No hashtags, no apps, no filters. All of it goes directly to you via text message, and then you reply to me via text message, and it's a very clean and smooth way to communicate. Become a Locked On Commanders Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Text me today. I'm David Harrison, credential member of the media, covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation, and I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, I appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode, I'm going to give you about a handful of NFL draft cornerback prospects that I think still could be on the Washington Commanders board, despite the additions they've made here in the first wave of free agency. But first, we got to talk about what they've done in free agency. And we got a surprise visitor to the press conferences on Monday when former Los Angeles Chargers cornerback Michael Davis sat down, a previously unreported contract agreement. He sat down for a Zoom press conference, and Michael Davis is the 16th external free agent added to the roster this offseason by Adam Peters, the new Washington Commanders general manager. It's the 19th new contract signed in total, and that puts our current roster count, if you're counting along with me, at 67 players. You're going to add on 9 draft picks. That gives you 76 players, which then means you have 14 spots open. Again, as I've stated several times every day, as you'll remember this, teams typically bring in between 10 and 20 undrafted free agents after the end of the NFL draft every April. So theoretically, the team could be done signing free agents, but just like we saw on Monday with Michael Davis arriving, potentially also could not be done. So who is Michael Davis? Well, coming over from the Los Angeles Chargers, he's a 6'2", 196-pound cornerback. He just turned 29 in January. Undrafted free agent originally out of BYU back in 2017. He has spent the first 7 seasons of his NFL career with the Chargers. He worked with Coach Anthony Lynn while he was there. He was retained by Coach Brandon Staley when he took over, and was also able to survive 3 different defensive coordinators with the Chargers until his contract expired after this past season. He has started 74 games in the past 6 seasons, and I got to tell you, I've considered myself a pretty smart football guy, and the fact that this guy has started 74 games at corner in the past 6 seasons, and I didn't know who he was until we studied him here today. Kind of just reminds you how many players there really are in the NFL. Last year was a little bit of a down season for him considered. A lot of Chargers people consider it to be. But part of that was due to a confused cornerback room out there. They started him for a little while, stored another guy for a little while. They traded the other guy, J.C. Jackson, prize free agent that they got from the Patriots, ended up trading him back to the Patriots. So just never really settled down that cornerback room. Now, 2022 was a much better season for him. But look, he first started a game in the NFL in 2018, played 15 games in 2017, mostly on special teams. But he's played 626 or more defensive snaps for the Chargers every year starting in 2018. As a reference, Jamin Davis played about 100 more snaps in 2023 than that 626. So that kind of gives you a ballpark of how many snaps Michael Davis has been on the field consistently for the Chargers over the last handful of years. Now, Davis played 885 snaps in 2023, which is much more than Jamin Davis played. It's about as many as free safety Percy Butler played for the Commanders. In 2023, 87% of Michael Davis's snaps came from the outside corner positions. I was asked by an insider if Michael could potentially play in the slot. Only 19 of his 885 snaps on defense came in the slot. So Probably not. 81 of his snaps were considered box reps, which basically means he was lined up in close to the line of scrimmage, basically a cornerback. But if you see those offset kind of offensive formations where there's no receivers on one side of the ball and you're in zone, the corner tends to come up into the box. That's considered a box rep. So still a cornerback, right? Something interesting about him was a wide receiver at BYU. Originally, his highest PFF graded game in 2023 came against the Denver Broncos in Week 14 when he got a 90.2 overall coverage grade. His lowest graded game came against the Tennessee Titans, where he got a 36.8 coverage grade. And those are the two games that we watched. Again, I mentioned it in the opening. Our first batch of film studies to the insiders here this season. Listen, film study, and I mentioned this before, so every day you already know this information, but to do film study on a show like this one, you are supposed to have a license with the National Football League. We do not have a license with the National Football League. The license is incredibly expensive on purpose so that, your ESPNs, your Fox Sports, and all those guys, they have licenses, stuff like that to use game footage. We do not. So we also follow the rules here at Locked On. So we do not show game footage, game film, coach films, all 22, all that stuff on our shows. Now, that is because we can't broadcast them, all those things. So we can't put them on the show here, but again, insiders, we have gone over some things, and you guys have those again in your text message inboxes waiting for you whenever you want to digest those. But those are the two games we looked at with Michael Davis, Week 14 against the Denver Broncos, and then again against the Tennessee Titans in Week 2 of the 2023 NFL season. In that Week 14 game, PFF credited Michael Davis having 2 stops in run defense. And again, a stop on PFF means like a third down stop that prevented a first down or a stop that prevented a score, something like that. He was targeted 3 times, allowed 2 catches for 47 yards, only 3 yards of yak, 1 touchdown allowed, 1 interception, a passer rating 109.7, and he had 1 penalty called against him. Now, diving into that tape was very interesting because the very first play of the game was the interception that Michael Davis had, and it was a very interesting interception. It was an out-breaking route. Michael Davis drops down in zone, and what you can see on the tape as we watch it is the amount or the ability to anticipate and break very quickly on a ball as Russell Wilson is getting ready to deliver the ball to his out-breaking receiver. Michael Davis is seeing it. He's anticipating it. He's following it. He closes on the ball. And really, at the end of the day, because of the zone coverage, because of the off coverage, if Russell Wilson puts the ball where he's supposed to put it, it's probably a completed pass. But because the ball is behind the receiver, Michael Davis is able to close down and essentially takes the ball away from the Denver Broncos receiver. Now, obviously, there's a mistake there by the Broncos quarterback. The route wasn't the most crisp in the world. Again, on the film study, you'll see that. But at the end of the day, what you really like about what Michael Davis did was the ability to recognize, click, and close, right? So it clicks in your brain, the ball's about to come out. It's about to come out in my direction. You close on the route, you close on the ball, and then to have the wherewithal and the athleticism to close on the play. And while you're colliding and wrestling with the receiver, you get the ball away from him for a takeaway. Very key takeaway in the game for the Los Angeles Chargers in that situation against quarterback Russell Wilson. So you like the physicality, you like the intelligence, and then you like the range, seeing him close on that thing. And then the range is also something we noticed throughout the course of the film study, whether it's a deep route, whether it's short routes, whether it's zone coverage. You saw a lot of range out of Michael Davis. The big play of the game that he was able to get, or that he gave up, came against Cortland Sutton. It was a 47 or not, I don't think it was a 48-yard touchdown, 46-yard touchdown, somewhere in that range. Basically scramble drill, right? Russell Wilson had pretty much all day to get rid of the ball. And, that's kind of a situation where defenders are in disadvantageous situation. The offensive player obviously studies the scramble drills. They practice the scramble drills. He knows what he's about to do. The defender doesn't know what he was about to do. Cortland Sutton basically able to just turn up field in a moment's notice and get ahead of Michael Davis there enough that Russell Wilson's able to find him in the end zone for a touchdown score. So, again, overall, very good tape there for Michael Davis, and you certainly like what you see. And then in run defense, you certainly like what you see as well. Some really smart run defense plays, some containment, and some ability to bring the ball carrier down, or at least contribute to bring a ball carrier down, which got a little bit more difficult in Week 2 when the Los Angeles Chargers played the Tennessee Titans and Derrick Henry. Now, in that game, again, credited with two stops, did give up 3 catches on 3 targets, 54 yards, 3 yards after a catch, a touchdown, a 158.3 passer rating. So we'll break down what we saw in that game against the Tennessee Titans, and we'll talk about another new cornerback, Noah Igbinoghene, coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, who says you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets for your next big event. And Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They've got those last-minute tickets, but they also have flash deals, zone deals. They make it as easy as possible to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. And Game Time also has the Game Time guarantee. So if you find the same tickets in the same section or the same row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use a promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Continuing on out today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Everydayers, come back tomorrow when we dive into another position group, some more new free agents. We'll talk about some more of what we saw in our film study, update the depth chart, talk about some potential draft prospects. Always resetting and reevaluating every position group on this team as it continues to blend or continues to mold into Dan Quinn and Adam Peters' eyes. Right before our eyes. As you know, Locked On has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, come back March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern time to catch the best Major League Baseball season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. Again, find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today's 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Now, we're talking about Michael Davis here. We talked about the Broncos game and some of the good things that we saw there. Going up against the Titans, again, much more difficult run game to defend, right? Derrick Henry. And early on, you see a deep ball completion against Michael Davis coming from Ryan Tannehill to one of his receivers. But it's one of those plays where really when you watch it, it's just a situation where sometimes the quarterback's going to put the ball in the right place. Sometimes the receiver's just going to make a better play. And it just happens because Michael Davis is in phase. He's in position. And where the ball is thrown, if Ryan Tannehill doesn't put that ball in the spot that he does, if it's even half a yard to the right, it's potentially an interception, probably at least an incompletion. So it's just one of those throws that sometimes, man, you do everything you can do as a defender, and the offense just makes it happen. Anyway, there was a run play where Michael Davis kind of made a decision, business decision, didn't get out of the way, or decided to stay out of the way of Derrick Henry. Can't really say I blame him a whole heck of a lot when it's Derrick Henry bearing down on you. But there was another play where Tennessee Titans rookie last year, Tajay Spears gets the ball on basically a misdirection play, and Michael Davis able to set the edge very, very well, keep contained very, very well, and basically brings Tajay Spears down with one hand. Ends up getting a little bit of help there at the end of the rep, but for the most part brings him down with one hand. The touchdown catch that he gave up comes at the end of the game, so that's pretty painful. You're trying to close out a game, trying to hold on to a lead. I think he gave up a little bit of too much of an inside release to Titans receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. But I also think he was expecting over the middle help from the safety in the middle of the end zone a lot sooner than it actually came. So a little bit of one, a little bit of the other. Both, I think, deserve a little bit of blame for that touchdown catch. So, but overall, you like what you see out of Michael Davis in coverage. You like what you see from his intelligence, his football awareness in zone and man, his ability to play in phase. And then I think some of the receiver skills that he has from his time as a receiver shine through as well. But he's not the only new Washington Commanders cornerback who has a receiver background. Noah Igbinoghene was a receiver at Auburn for 2 years before he became a defensive back in 2019. First round draft pick of the Miami Dolphins when he came out of Auburn, ended up with the Dallas Cowboys. So obviously Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr. know him very well. 5'11", so a little bit shorter, 197 pounds. He was active for 5 games in 2023. He got defensive snaps in 2 of them. Most of those defensive snaps came against the New York Giants in week 1. We got 16 of them. Next time he got defensive snaps was in week 5 against the San Francisco 49ers. He got 9 of them. So total of 25. 23 of those 25 snaps came out wide, 1 in the slot, 1 in the box. So again, not a slot defender. He is a perimeter corner. He got special teams reps in 5 games, including 4 of the first 5 games. And he returned a blocked field goal in week 1, his first and only career touchdown so far in the NFL. Again, first round pick of the Miami Dolphins in 2020, started 5 games in 3 seasons. First career interception came in 2022. He also returned kicks at Auburn. So potentially something that you might be able to see the Commanders revive a little bit if they need to. 4 career kickoff returns in the NFL. All of those came in 2020, all of those with the Miami Dolphins. and he's only had 5 penalties enforced against him with over 1,100 plays on the field between defense and special teams. I thought that was kind of impressive. I don't know what the average rate is, but I feel like only 5 penalties enforced against you with over the 1,100 snaps between defense and special teams is pretty, I think it's pretty impressive. So I think it shows a pretty clean brand of football. So we dove into the only 2 games we really had last year to watch. So the 16 snaps against the New York Giants, the 9 snaps against the San Francisco 49ers, and in week 1 against the Giants, he gave up 1 catch on 2 targets, 8 yards, 7 yards after catch, a 60.4 passer rating, had the blocked field goal return for a touchdown. He didn't block the field goal. He recovered a blocked field goal, returned it for a touchdown. In the film, what it looks like from Noah Igbinoghene is he's going to be a guy who's better up close to the line of scrimmage, better up close to the receiver where he can fight face-to-face, kind of close quarters type of guy and be physical early than he is in off coverage. And off coverage, especially in off zone coverage, gets a little flat-footed, and that opens up the potential for him to get spun around, get stuck in the dirt, or to get completely blown by. A little slow to react as well, coming out of the back pedal once he sees the ball coming out, a little bit slow to kind of close in on those zone passes. And he doesn't appear to be the most willing tackler on tape either. A little bit smaller in frame and all that stuff. In the 9 defensive snaps we saw with the San Francisco 49ers, or against the San Francisco 49ers, rather, gave up 1 catch on 1 target, 19 yards, 1 yard after catch, a 118.8 passer rating. And again, you kind of saw some of those unwillingness to be physical in the run game show up, to a really bad pursuit angle, really didn't, get off a block very well, or didn't show really, really great effort to get off a block. And then again, the zone coverage issues kind of showed up again early on, especially I think the very first rep that we saw him on the field against the 49ers for just not great zone presence and issues there popping up, leading to a big gain for Brandon Ayuk. Now, that big gain was negated by a hold call, but again, as a defender, you want to make sure you're not giving up those types of plays in the first place. So you certainly see some signs as to why he's been a depth player, why he's not really been on the field a whole heck of a lot. But you also saw, especially, that field goal, that blocked field goal return for a touchdown, you kind of see some of the athleticism. He's a long strider. He's got some of that long distance speed. And you certainly saw some areas where, again, if he's able to work in the short area of the field and be physical up front and try to mirror and all that stuff, you see some of those receiver skills shining out with him as well. So look at these 2 new additions. I think if you look at the cornerback depth chart projection for the Washington Commanders as it stands right now, I think Michael Davis is probably going to come in and compete for a starting job in training camp. I think right now, looking at him on tape, looking at what we saw from Benjamin St-Juste, looking at what we saw from Emmanuel Forbes, I think right now it's easy to kind of look at Michael Davis, say he's probably going to win one of those starting jobs. That would leave the second starting job to either Benjamin St-Juste or Emmanuel Forbes. I think right now I'd probably give the tip to that. To Benjamin St-Juste. So Emmanuel Forbes, Noah Igbinoghene, Christian Holmes, Tree Castro Fields round out the depth of your cornerback room. And then Quan Martin right now is your most qualified nickel. From where I sit, again, I know Benjamin St-Juste has had some nickel experience. I never really liked him in the nickel, but I think Quan Martin personally is probably your best nickel. He's also probably your best free safety at this point in time as well. But we're not talking safeties right now. We're talking corners. Now, this depth chart obviously could change with the addition of new free agents, maybe a trade, or NFL draft picks. I'm going to give you about a handful of draft targets for the Washington Commanders, potentially add to this group. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on that 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. So get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, we got to talk about NFL draft, right? We got the roster, we got the free agents, we got to talk about the NFL draft, the next wave of adding players to the roster. The next big wave of adding players to the roster will come at the end of April in Detroit, Michigan at the NFL draft. Again, still time to get more free agents and all that stuff. And as those types of things come in, we'll certainly update these. But right now, I think when you look at the Washington Commanders, I think personally, I came away from my first round of watching Michael Davis tape. I came away pretty happy, actually. I think he fits a lot of what we've heard Dan Quinn, Joe Wood Jr., and those guys time to talk about wanting to do. But I don't think by any means he's, a long-term necessarily starter right out the gate. He's only got a 1-year deal coming here. So it's very much kind of a come in, prove that you can be what we think you can be type of thing. And look, don't sleep on Benjamin St-Juste and Manuel Forbes either. Experience is a great teacher. Both those guys coming in, looking to ball out, potentially keep those starting jobs from Michael Davis. So none of these projections are certainly etched in stone in any way, shape, or form. But if you look at the Washington Commanders to address the cornerback need in the NFL draft, I think the highest possible chance they could do that is if Iowa State cornerback TJ Tampa is available in the early part of the second round. Tampa comes in 6'2", 200 pounds. He's a 22-year-old senior. He's got long arms. He's a physical cover cornerback. His footwork certainly needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So that is something that they'll need to work on. But I think when you look at TJ Tampa, you see a guy that looks like a Dan Quinn, Joe Wood Jr. type of defender. So if he is there early in the second round, I'm not saying they will take him, but certainly that is, I think, the highest that the Washington Commanders will take a cornerback is if that situation unveils itself. The second best option in the early second round, I think Mike St-Juste out of Michigan. I think he's the best nickel cornerback in the class, 5'10", 182 pounds. He was a wide receiver his first 3 years in Michigan. So you see the Michael Davis former receiver pedigree. You see the Noah Igbinoghene former wide receiver pedigree. Now you get the Mike St-Juste still former wide receiver pedigree coming in from Michigan. He's physical all across the field, no matter where he is. He could play cover safety in a pinch if you need him to. I think he's kind of a smaller version of Quan Martin, and so it allows Quan Martin to stay at free safety. You bring Mike St-Juste in to be your nickel. A third-round guy that I'm looking at, Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon. He's a local product, DMV kid, wide corner, 6'3", 195 pounds. He likes to play press man. He's got good size. He's fluid. He's athletic. He's got a slight build, though. Not the greatest tackler in the world, so you got to be able to live with those kind of what-ifs and buts. Day 3 projected guy that I like, Dwight McGlothern out of Arkansas, 6'2" kid, 185 pounds. He's a ball hawk. 8 interceptions in 3 years at Arkansas, 7 in the past 2 years. He's better in zone, but certainly capable in man. And in some ways, some people will tell you that it's harder to teach a guy to play in zone than it is to play man. So if you're already better in zone than you are in man, we just basically got to make you more comfortable playing physical, playing up close, staying on a guy's hip. His weakness is that physicality, though, so you're going to need to work on that. And hopefully in interviews or a top 30 visit or whatever, we're not going to use a top 30 visit on him, but in whatever visits you've had with him throughout the draft prospects or process, hopefully you get the inclination that he's willing to be more physical and willing to play a little bit braver. So Dwight McGlothern, a day 3 project type of guy that you could look at. Kyrie Jackson in the third round, maybe Mike St-Juste still the best nickel in the class in the early second round. And then, of course, TJ Tampa, who I have actually mock drafted to the Commanders in previous editions of these. Again, some people might not like seeing the Washington Commanders go first round and second round DBs last year and then go with an early second round pick at the DB room again this year. But I think it is a position group. If you just look at it with what you have and what you need, I think you understand that there is certainly a need there. And at the same time, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, those guys weren't here last year. They did not draft DBs in the first and second round last year. So they are not drafting them again. If they do that, it's a new group. It's a new mindset. So I certainly don't take it off the board. I do take it off the first round board. I think we're all pretty much settled maybe at quarterback in the first round. I think that's pretty much what we expect to happen. But I don't take defensive back off the board in the second round. I don't see them trading up, right? We had some talks about potentially packaging picks and trading back into the first round. Terrian Armstrong or Terrian Arnold out of Alabama is certainly a guy that some people have talked about in that venue. I don't think the Washington Commanders would necessarily do that. I don't think it's that serious. But I do think if a guy like TJ Tampa is there in the early second round or Mike St-Juste still in the early second round, I think if you're the Washington Commanders, you certainly have to take a look at it at a minimum. So cornerback prospects upgrade or updates, updating the roster, updating the depth chart, and looking at some NFL draft prospects. We will continue to do this. We got more free agents to talk about, to cover directly, cover deeply, and insiders. You've got more tape study coming your way as I continue to dive through what these guys bring to the Washington Commanders. Come back tomorrow. We're going to have more of that. In the meantime, you got questions or comments, throw them in the YouTube comment section or text me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and text me today. Don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.